Believe from both theory and practice that there's not going to come a time in which I suddenly say or believe or act like I'm done with addiction to meth. Like those that experience, I'm never going to hit a point where it's no longer worth it to me in my addict reckoning to get high on meth and use it to do all these things I can't do when I'm sober. So, because of that, I need to have a different kind of incentive structure, or uh, not incentive so much as motivation. Um, and here's what it is. Here's what it has to be. I dare myself to stay clean. Um, I am putting myself up to the task of staying clean, uh, not as a good in its own right necessarily, but as something which I am conferring a goodness or a quality of goodness onto uh, by means of my setting it up as my goal. So, because I'm saying it's my goal to be clean, being clean has value. Um, Whereas if I look at it without that idea of daring myself to do it, being clean has no. It's not something that I feel compelled to choose wholly and only because of its inherent value. Um, so me saying I'm daring myself, that that has a lot of power, in large part because that um, is an appeal to my teenage soul. That's how my teenage soul works, how it expands itself and um, enters into new fields of existence or possibility, is by having an internal dialogue in me that is essentially daring me to do stuff. Like there's especially to cross lines, to transgress. Um, so that is a mechanism that very much relies on my teenage soul as the motivating party or motivating system or factor, especially at the beginning. Uh, at the beginning is when my teenage soul is going to be strongest, most whole, because my teenage soul is just another way of saying my addiction, aka also my green body. Um, so my so to start out, it's actually, although it feels wrong or off, it's actually righteous to rely on my teenage soul to start this ball rolling. But as I progress through recovery, that teenage soul will be eroded and eroded and eroded away, um, as my self-centeredness is healed, and to the point where ultimately that won't be the motivating factor at all, and it'll be a different motivation than what I started with, but it'll be a gradual transition from the initial "I dare you to do it" to the final choosing this worthy thing for its inherent worth, which I'll be able to see at the end. Um, just real quick for shits and giggles, for my own benefit, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I'm going to tell you what that looks like in my model, my tetrahedral soul model, um, to have the ultimate state of my teenage soul being dead, which is what God has told me I need to make happen. My addiction to be dead. Basically, I conceptualize. I have two conceptions of parts of the soul. One is the tetrahedral one that I've done most of my videos on. The other is what I call somatic paths, which is like the left hand, right hand, etc., as just a linear, just a line, just a colored line with a beginning and an end. And they actually are interconvertible. So the the somatic path runs from the outermost tetrahedral shell of the tetrahedral model all the way through all of the infinitely many successive gradations, smaller and smaller and smaller tetrahedral shells, all the way until it gets to the middle. So the middle is the end of the path, and the middle is where already there's located in my structure a void, an empty point, a brokenness. That is my brokenness. That was my first death. My second death will be at the other end, at the beginning of that somatic path. And it will essentially be like the vertices on the outermost shell popping open, and then the green hide of it, so to speak, sloughing away. And so there no longer being a membrane or a boundary indicating one iteration versus the next. And so once that final second death takes place, which I'm now relying on happening as a miracle, meaning God's spontaneous action as a result of my putting in work, the work being the recovery, my recovery. So I'm relying on that to create that that other void, that other empty null point. And once that is so, there won't be any way to differentiate one iteration from the next when this green recursive faculty is doing its recursion. And that will be the state in which I can make the recursion go essentially upwards, go when I can know the pattern again and realize in truth the action of the pattern that runs up the scales to infinity rather than going down in an entropic fashion. This is called eutropy, which is my pointing opposite of entropy. So that's what I'm going and where I'm going and why I am choosing to get myself going on this recovery once and for all, on the sole motivation to start with of the fact that I'm daring myself to do it. And now I'm not just daring myself to do it, I'm publicly proclaiming that I'm daring myself to do it. And I'm trying to get some accountability going and really get hyped and revved up into that idea of I'm doing this to prove something to myself and to the world. And that's a reason enough for me to do it. Okay, that's cool, y'all. Peace. Bye.